challenge is that these figures are hardly adhered to, as most candidates are alleged to exceed the threshold and hardly report their political spendings or even accurately as required by INEC.
Now, INEC has indeed expressed frustration over this development and laments its lack of capacity to either enforce or track the spending of political parties and their candidates. And this, of course, has been on for over the years. Especially now, with the see and buy syndrome rearing its head in the electoral space, INEC is really concerned as to how to effectively enforce campaign spending and then monitor the financing.
So, this morning, we shall look at the issue as we try to find out if there are new strategies being considered and what roles organizations such as ICPC, CBN, EFCC, and the civil society is playing to deal with campaign financing.
But one question to ask is, what are the implications of using too much money or too less of it for elections? And then what are also the implications for good governance and democracy if the electoral process is awash with funds? And what is the role of the electorate? These and more questions we shall attempt to elicit responses from our guests on Good Morning Nigeria today as we engage various stakeholders. It's on that note, we'd like to welcome you to the first edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you as usual on Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority, that's the NTA. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kieran Umayo, joining Kingsley in welcoming you to this very first edition of the program for the week. And we'll also bring you companion segments as usual, which include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But first, let's take the news highlights with Najatu Tijani. Good morning, Najatu.
Hello, Kieran and Kingsley. Here's the news. Africa youths have been challenged to take ownership of the renewed battle against corruption by pooling their energies towards ensuring that Africa's resources remain on the continent and are utilized effectively for public good. President Muhammadu Buhari, who threw the challenge at the launch of the Africa Youth Congress Against Corruption, emphasized that reversing the negative trends of the menace and its implication is very much in the hands of young people.
This fight against corruption is yours to lead and to win. I am confident that you will give due support to the continental strategies to stem illicit financial flows out of Africa, expedite stolen assets recovery and return. By so doing, accountability and change will begin with you and me.
In the meantime, youths attending the African Youth Congress Against Corruption at the State House, Abuja, convened by President Muhammadu Buhari, say they have realized the damage that corruption is doing to their destiny and are ready to actively participate in stopping it. Foreign Desk correspondent Makut Simon Macham engaged the youths on how they intend to make a change.
And I think the whole idea of this Congress is to examine what young people should do as themselves. Let's not always point the finger out to leaders, to the state, to institutions, but also to do some self-reflection.
We need to go down to the root. What is corruption? People think corruption is just stealing the money. There's favoritism, there's nepotism, everything, it comes with corruption. So I think that what youths need to do is we need to follow the money.
Sensitization, starting early and developing a completely different narrative. And of course, the purpose of having a champion of corruption, such as Mr. President, is to have somebody that the people look up to, especially that the youth look up to.
President Muhammadu Buhari has constituted a Presidential Implementation Committee on Autonomy of State Legislature and State Judiciary in accordance with the fourth alteration to the 1999 Constitution. The purpose of the committee, which is to drive the actualization of the autonomy granted to the legislature and judiciary at the state level, has the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami as chairman, while Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters, Senator Ita Enang, is to serve as secretary. Other members include representatives of states, judiciary and legislatures, as well as other interest groups. Terms of reference of the committee, among others, include assessing and reviewing the level of compliance by all the 36 states of the Federation with Section 121, subsection 3 of the 1999 Constitution as amended to monitor, ensure and cause the implementation of financial autonomy across the judiciary and legislature of the 36 states. In another development, President Muhammadu Buhari has lauded Nigerians for curbing excessive taste for foreign products, which has positioned the country for food self-sufficiency and resulted in savings of more than $21 billion. A statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, says the President was reacting to the latest disclosure by the Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiele, on Nigeria emerging from being a net importer of rice to a major producer through the Anchor Borrower Scheme. The program also generated more than 2.5 million jobs. Describing the development as heartwarming, the President said it was just a matter of time before a significantly positive impact would be made in the statistics of the unemployed in the country, particularly from the agriculture sector, adding that the enormous savings will be deployed to other critical areas like infrastructure, education, healthcare, and many others. Meanwhile, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is due to address a group of notable German business leaders in Berlin, Germany today. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the Vice President on Media and Publicity, Laolu Akonde, says the Vice President will be speaking on the potential of the Nigerian market and the gains recorded by the country through its ease of doing business reforms. He will, among other engagements, meet with key German financial sector executives with interest in investing in Nigeria and other business leaders in sectors including agricultural seeds production, technology and renewable energy. The meetings will consolidate on the outcome of the German Chancellor Angela Merkel's visit to Nigeria in August earlier this year. The Berlin business interactions with the Vice President are being organized by the Nigerian Embassy in Berlin in conjunction with the German African Business Association Africa Fähren. The Vice President will also be in London on Tuesday, December 11th, where he will feature at the Royal Society Investment Forum hosted by Jeune Afrique Media Group themed Investing in Africa. From there, he will proceed to Cairo, Egypt, where he will be representing President Muhammadu Buhari later in the week at the first Intra-African Fair, which will be taking place in Cairo from the 11th to 17th December 2018. And the wife of the President, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, has called on well-meaning Nigerians to invest in the education of children, particularly orphans and other less privileged ones, so as to enhance the development of the country. Mrs. Buhari stated this at the inauguration of a modern orphanage in Maiduguri, built by the wife of Borno State Governor Nana Kashim Shettima.
Borno State. I would also like to congratulate Her Excellency Mrs. Nana Shettima for actualizing her dream out of the passion that she has for women and children in Borno State. She will be able to come up with an orphanage center that will cater for so many children. May God bless the orphanage and bless the children.
We shall continue to provide all the necessary support to you and to your dear husband to ensure your victory at the full term 2019.
The senator representing Akwa Ibom Northwest Senatorial District, Godswill Akpabio, is assuring President Muhammadu Buhari of a resounding victory in Akwa Ibom State, going by his commitment to the transformation agenda. Senator Akpabio gave the assurance at a solemn assembly to flag off his senatorial election campaign and inauguration of Ikorekpene Senatorial District of the All Progressives Congress Campaign Council.
And that is why in my state and across the entire Niger Delta and South, we will surprise Nigerians with the votes that will give to President Muhammadu Buhari.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kingsley. After the break, I'm Naja Atutichani.
And you are watching Good Morning Nigeria. Now we go to business. A Nigerian entrepreneur commenced the inaugural Intra-Africa Trade Fair IATF, which kicks off tomorrow in Egypt, describing it as a profitable avenue for participating Nigerians to showcase their goods to the international market. Joy Uzo has more on this and other business news.
It's good to have you join us on Business News. We'll start with the inaugural Intra-African Trade Fair, IATF, which is billed to commence in Cairo, Egypt from 11th December. The trade fair, which is organized by the African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, in collaboration with the African Union Commission and hosted by Egypt, has attracted more than 1,000 registered exhibitors from 41 countries and is expected to be attended by more than 70,000 visitors. In view of this, before his departure, Business News caught up with Mr. Andrew Anya Etim, one of the many Nigerian small businesses to participate at the trade fair under the sponsorship of Association of Professional Nigerians in Egypt, APNEG, after a competitive process that involved extensive review of their profiles and products by members of APNEG. Mr. Etim, who is no doubt excited about the opportunity, said the participation would expose Nigerian products to the Egyptian market, as they would also cash in on the opportunity to make useful contacts that will help enhance their skills as entrepreneurs.
We are going out there to show the world and to show Africa what we have, and hopefully we are going to have potential buyers from Egypt, from South Africa, from Zambia, everywhere. So when the orders now start coming in, our production capacity is going to improve.
APNEG, which is open to all Nigerian professionals resident in Egypt, was established to, among other things, work for the advancement of Nigeria, promote and project a positive image of Nigeria and our cultural values, promote mutual understanding among its members, and serve as a channel of communication with the government and people of Nigeria. Moving on, the blockchain is a digital ledger in which transactions made in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies are recorded chronologically and publicly. Money laundering is the process of creating the appearance that large amounts of money obtained from criminal activity, such as drug trafficking or terrorist activity, originated from a legitimate source. In an interview with Business News, Fadile Olusiji explains the blockchain and how it works.
Is blockchain going to become mainstream? I think I'm almost certain that blockchain will become mainstream. And virtual currencies will become mainstream because that's what will happen in the future most likely. So I think what Nigeria, bringing it back home now, I think what Nigeria should concentrate on, one, is the competency. Let's not just be users this time around. Other revolutions have passed. We are always users. The IT revolution, everything, internet, we are always users. But this time around, let us participate. Let us be involved. Let us start thinking of, okay, we are not sure it's going to become mainstream, but in case it becomes mainstream, let us start thinking about legislation. Let us start thinking about economic policies that we will use so that these things will catch us unawares, like other ones that have caught us.
Blockchain technology, it says, has the potential to completely revolutionize industries like healthcare and insurance, adding that another industry that blockchain stands to benefit enormously is finance. And to the equities market, here is a graphic representation of how stocks fared on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange last Friday. We'll keep you abreast with activities on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange this Monday. Thanks for your time. I'm Joy Uzo.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Up next for us now is a review of the papers this morning. All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebe, is right here with us in the studios. And Bayo, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning.
Yeah, Bayo, good morning.
Good morning,
I hope you had a restful weekend.
Yes, good morning, Nigeria.
All right.
All right, we have a number of newspapers set to review this morning. First, let's go to Leadership newspaper. Leadership newspaper. Untold story of PMB's refusal to sign electoral amendment bill with two riders here. Presidential candidates back decision. No plan to override president. That's from the House of Reps. That's on page 4 of the Leadership newspaper. NAF to receive 6 helicopter gunships from Italy. That's on page 10 of the Leadership newspaper. NAF to receive 6 helicopter gunships from Italy is on page 10. And our federal government affirms citizens' right to access social media is on page 18 of the same newspaper. Now, oil marketers deny signing agreement with government. It's on page 30. PMB, that's President Muhammadu Buhari, will garner more votes than in 2015, says the governor of Kogi State. It's on page 10 of Leadership.
All right, let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust, right below the name flag, says Electoral Act. That's the kicker. APC senators to block PDP's override plot. That's page 3. And on page 11, candidates with corruption cases to be charged before poll. And that's according to the acting chair of the EFCC, Magu. And the list story says, with a double-decker headline, absence of boards and commissioners slows SEC, that's Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Federal Character Commission. Details of the story can be found on the front page as well as page 5. And right at the foot of the front page of Daily Trust newspaper, why we are creating National Microfinance Bank, according to the CBN, page 17. 2019, I am not neutral, that's according to Obasanjo, former head of state. Details can be found on page 13. And lastly, Congolese backs 4 years for tramadol exportation. Details can be found on page 51. All right, Bayo, let's listen to you first. Yes.
The electoral bill is on a 5th leg return to the National Assembly. The president has said that they have returned the electoral bill to the National Assembly, apparently withholding his assent, and he has sent his reasons. But until the National Assembly resumes plenary on Tuesday, nobody is likely to know the details and the actual content of the letter. But already newspapers are speculating. But by way of background, you recall that the bill was first sent to the president February 14th in this year, and at that time, INEC had already published its timetable in October. And so the president opined that amendment, particularly of Section 25(1), was in conflict with Section 72 of the Constitution, and therefore it was returned to the National Assembly. The second time the bill was sent to the president returned it again. That was on June 27th. Towards the end of July, when it will have reached the 30 days, the president returned it with the proper communication. The third trip was on 3rd of August, before the National Assembly went on its long recess. That was when the National Assembly passed the bill and sent it forth. On that instance, the president said he withheld his assent because of drafting errors and cross-referencing that had made old section of Section 2, which was in conflict with Section 1A of the new amendment. Now, the fourth time, saw the National Assembly pass the bill on 23rd of October, and it was transmitted to the president November 8, early last month. Mr. President withheld his assent and communicated to the National Assembly on Friday, which is 7th of December. However, the papers are already speculating about the reasons. The leadership says that the president may have suggested a forwarding date. That is to say, the bill should be made to take effect from 2019. And therefore, assenting the bill now will already jeopardize the political process, which is in top gear. The National Assembly has two options: either to agree with the president or override his assent. But to override his withholding of assent will require a 2/3 majority of both chambers of the National Assembly. There are indications, however, from Daily Trust that the bill as proposed is composed of a landmine that has been laid deliberately by the National Assembly, and therefore, if the president has signed, it was likely to jeopardize the electoral process. They said the ongoing electoral process was done on the basis of the Electoral Act 2010, and to sign it would mean changing the rule before even the game begins. They also cite an ECOWAS protocol that says that an electoral act that affects an election cannot be assented to 90 days before that time. But the leadership has another perspective to it. According to its own investigation, it said that it has been discovered that some unscrupulous Nigerians had perfected plans to tamper with the 2019 electoral process using new technology because of the basis that a lot of electronic functioning will be used in the electoral system. They said the politicians had engaged some persons they describe as hackivists, experts in hacking, and to subvert the electoral process of the election. And one of such firms is a Russian firm, and in fact, the paper is saying that President Muhammad Buhari is already in touch with the Russian counterpart to rein in those rogue persons who are involved in that. They also cite another instance of a political party that has engaged a British outfit that is engaged in using the Facebook as a means of subverting the personal data of persons and also using it to influence persons in the election. Above all, the leadership says a forum of presidential candidates comprising 40 presidential parties, presidential candidates and political parties have supported President Muhammadu Buhari against not assenting to the bill. In fact, they have filed a suit at an Abuja High Court to stop the president from signing the electoral bill into law. They have joined in the suit the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the Chairman of Independent Electoral Commission, as well as the Attorney General of the Federation. So it has become a battle now that is already at the court. Meanwhile, we are waiting for the National Assembly to resume at plenary to know the details of the correspondence from the President for withholding his assets.
Yeah, I think it's important because every commentator on the electoral amendment bill is saying things from his or her own perspective. As you indicated, let's read the full correspondence from the president. But it would appear that from the reports so far that the president's chief concern is let not get a new law that will affect the conduct of the 2019 elections, since the elections are already so close by.
69 days
are already so close by. And therefore, Kieran, Bayo, what is crucial is the president now, from what has been reported so far, is talking about the commencement date of the piece of legislation. So, assuming there are booby traps in the legislation, and of course, no assembly will make a law with the purpose of creating or setting up booby traps, is the commencement. If the National Assembly did not state a commencement date for 2019, and the president assented to the bill now the rule will be that the law takes effect from the date of his assent. So, but since he has withheld his assent, and that says, listen, let's see how this can take effect after the 2019 election. And I'm sure the lawmakers can walk around there. Kieran, what do you think?
And many Nigerians, will also wonder, why there are proponents, of the signing of the bill. Some legislators, including the Senate President, has been asking the President to sign that bill. So one wonders their own perspective to it. Why should they be promoting the signing, with respect to the fact that we all agree now that election is close by, and bringing in a new law that will guide the electoral process will perhaps in some way jeopardize the entire process.
Well, if you ask me, I will say that the shoe is on the other foot. You recall that when it comes to issues of budgeting, the National Assembly will tell you that the National Assembly is not a rubber stamp. They must look at everything and convince themselves before they sign. The president this time is not a rubber stamp. He's also looking at the electoral bill that was sent to him and looking at the implications for the forthcoming general elections. And also,
historically, the Electoral Act has always been a contentious piece of legislation. if you recall, in 2001, 2002, you had a running battle, between the executive and the legislature on the one hand, and between the lawmakers and the rest of political stakeholders, including state governments and local governments, over some of the provisions of those the electoral act 2001, 2002, and all kinds of amendments that came and those that were expunged, together, of course, with what happened in 2006. So it's always been a point of question because it sets the ground rules, as it were, for the conduct of elections.
Why do we have to be reviewing these electoral laws? One may ask, because we had one in 2010, which of course was used in 2015 general elections. Now in 2018, we are coming up with another amendment with an election coming up in 2019. So why the continuous review and updating of these laws? Does it mean that
you recall there was an attempt to amend the Electoral Act in 2014 ahead of the 2015 election, but unfortunately, the process fell through. Why it's necessary to amend is because of the dynamism of the political process, and also to take account of judicial decisions, to say on account of that, reform election. But again, I agree with you, there are also shenanigans that are involved.
In other climes, is that obtainable in other climes? Does it obtain in
other climes? To play safe, what they do is, when you have such a contentious legislation, it is not allowed to take effect immediately. For instance, if there are amendments that will affect, for instance, senators, members of House of Rep, and this kind of thing, it takes effect 1 year after it has been passed. That is to avoid this kind of conflicting situations. Particularly in the United States, they have such laws.
No. In the U.S., it's a big issue. It's a big issue because it is the states. It is the states. You have American elections not as straightforward as it appears. Let's return to the papers.
Okay, now let's go to the Daily Independent newspaper. We have a headline here: Fire reverses fire shares embargo on banks. That can be found on page 9 of Daily Independent. Yoruba youths declare support for Buhari Shimbajo. It's also on page 9 of Daily Independent. Now, Shimbajo heads to Berlin to address German business community today. And there's another story there. Ex-SGF urges northern monarchs to unite and build the region. All right, that's all for it.
Okay, I come to a New Telegraph newspaper. Above the nameplate of the New Telegraph, I won't resign over 1.4 billion naira payment. That's according to the NBA president, Usoro. Explains how he got money from Akwa Ibom government. And food import discipline saves Nigeria $21 billion. That's according to President Buhari. Details can be found on page 30. And below the nameplate, very quickly, says Clark, Buhari's rejection of electoral bid threats to 2019 polls. We already discussed that. APC, Bazu deceived Buhari on projects, page 6. Bankers Committee to boost youth entrepreneurship, page 4. Catholic Bishop of Enugu rejects Mbaka's apology, bans political prophecies. That's on page 33. Bio.
Well, Nigerians have been applauded for curbing their taste for foreign products. This has not only improved Nigeria's economy, but it has enhanced our self-sufficiency in food production. The president commended Nigerians because we were able to save $21 billion on food imports. This was revealed by the governor of the central bank that between in January 2015, Nigeria spent about $665.4 million importing food. By October 2018, it has been reduced to $160.4 million. They said this cumulative reduction of rice imports is down to 99.6%. That of fish to 81.5%. Therefore, the president says the resources saved will be deployed to infrastructure, education, healthcare, and other services. There were some obituaries and burial. Madam Gold Coast Dixon, mother of Governor Siraki Dixon, had been buried. She was aged 72. President Muhammadu Buhari was represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, and he said Madam Gold Coast was a disciplinarian who committed so much into raising her 7 children and to what they achieved in life. On behalf of the government, his family, and the people of Nigeria, he commiserated with the Governor Siraki Dixon, his family, and the people of Bayelsa State. Vice President was there, The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party was also there. So also were 6 other governors. And Senator Ahmed Arua, you remember him? He was a senator representing Kaduna Central in the Senate for 1999 and 2007. He died yesterday at a hospital in Kaduna. Senator Ahmed Arua was a philanthropist. In fact, when he returned from America, he established a ranch in the outskirts of Kaduna, and he also became the proprietor of Ranchers Bees that dominated the Nigerian football scene for quite some while.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. Thank you, by the way, the souls rest in peace. But I don't know whether Ranchers Bees actually dominated the Nigerian soccer scene for a while. I mean, we had big clubs, even though Rangers, it wasn't until recently that...
I don't want to go to the argument of Rangers, Bender Insurance.
Very quickly.
I leave that to the two of you.
Bender Insurance is not existing anymore.
Very quickly. Bender Insurance is right on the rebound.
There you go again.
The deputy governor actually, put on his jersey to play for the club. It's nothing. And mighty jets of just got whipped by Bender Insurance.
We know the records. We know the records.
We
know the records. Okay. Rangers has always been indomitable. You know that.
All right, let's take a look at the editorial that's coming from the Daily Sun newspaper at page 15. And it's INEC, security agencies, and the 2019 election. And the editorial begins. Despite President Buhari's recent promise that his administration will ensure the conduct of free and fair elections, many Nigerians believe that the roles of INEC, the police, and other security agencies are critical to making the exercise credible.
Yes, because we talk about the editorial, let's quickly talk about this alarm that is being raised. They are saying that marketers are saying that they are shutting down the country because they are owed 800 billion naira. But another report is saying that an agreement has been reached with the marketers, and a sum of about 336 billion has been paid as a first tranche. The second tranche is to be paid in 2019, and the agreement says that the third tranche will be paid by the year 2020. That's having been signed. NNPC also says that it has 55 liters of PMS, that is petrol, available. Therefore, there should be no panic buying. Also, they have sufficient diesel available in the country. So that should put the instances of that alarming headline to rest, that there's been some respite as far as the petrol negotiations are concerned. Now the editorial. The newspaper is happy on the fact that in spite of President Muhammadu Buhari's assurances that the elections 2019 will be free, fair, and credible, a lot of concerns and a lot of that, if it is to be achieved at all, will be held on the Independent National Electoral Commission, as well as police and other security agencies. The editorial is happening on the fact that the instances of vote buying and infractions that were reported during the Ekiti and Osun elections is giving a lot of Nigerians doubt about having a credible and free and fair election. So therefore, they have enjoined the Independent National Electoral Commission to be neutral and apolitical. So also they have enjoined the security chiefs to be very neutral. The editorial seems to be very light with politicians. Who are those who rig elections? Who are those who buy votes? It is the politicians who are there, and I think the editorial should have been harder on the politicians, because if they are thuggery, it is organized by politicians. If they are vote buying, it is organized by politicians. But so I have an inkling. 2019 election is likely to be free of all this. Why? Because of cross from one party to the other. Everybody who probably in the former party knew how they used to do it is in the other party. So they are likely to reveal their strategies across, so much so that one will neutralize the other, and we are likely to have a free, fair, and credible election.
You know, we've had elections in this country a number of times. Let's just pray that the 2019 election does not even come up with new strategies. You know, vote buying is just what we saw in 2 previous elections, just heard this year. Let's just hope that nothing new emerges, during 2019 elections. And on that note, I'd like to thank you, Bayo, for being here this morning and for your analysis. We're going to see you again tomorrow.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, you're still on Good Morning Nigeria, and we'll take a break now. When we return, we'll be moving into the major issue for today, which is, of course, campaign financing ahead of 2019 general elections. Do stay with us.
Hey.
now to set the tone for our conversation, which is on campaign financing ahead of the 2019 general elections. Let's take this backgrounder from our correspondent, Dennis Adegunloye.
All over the world, political parties are aware that the game of politics is driven by money. This undeniable fact is the reason political parties include in their constitutions the means by which funds are raised for political activities. These include membership subscriptions, payments for expression of interest in elective positions, donations, fundraising activities, and support from the corporate sector. Just as it is for political parties, the chances for success of candidates seeking elective offices is, according to experts, more often than not determined or dependent on the amount of money they can raise and spend. In the Nigerian context, some candidates take loans, borrow money from godfathers, and some even sell their properties. Just a few of the means by which funds are raised for political activities, including campaign financing. The political process, which has become commercialized, is a global dilemma, and the question is, if money is the overriding factor, where does this leave the liberal ideas about choice, sovereignty, and the power of the majority? Where really are the people in the democratic process? Many countries, including Nigeria, have indeed written into their electoral laws rules and procedures on campaign financing to rescue democracy from money bags, the influence of money, prevention of undue use of money, and to preserve the people's sovereignty. These include laws that forbid the unauthorized use of state resources for political purposes, contributions from dubious sources, violation of campaign funding limits, the use of money to influence voters and election outcomes, non-disclosure of campaign spending, and abuse of the media. The 1999 Constitution, as amended, affirms the powers of the Independent National Electoral Commission to inquire into and assess campaign finances and a party's source and management of funds. It also provides for sanctions for violators. The 2010 Electoral Act, as amended, also caps spending limits of presidential, governorship, senatorial, representative, and House of Assembly candidates. Upon assumption of office in 2015, President Muhammadu Buhari recognized that campaign finances posed a threat to democracy and decided that he would focus on the abuse of campaign financing as part of the anti-corruption fight. These issues will form the basis of discussions for guests on Good Morning Nigeria shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Dennis Adegunloye, there for that background report. We already have guests with us in the studios. First, we'd like to welcome Ishak Garba Aliyu, his Assistant Director who is in charge of campaign finance tracking at the Independent National Electoral Commission. Ishak Garba, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, also here with us in the studios, a familiar face whenever we're discussing electoral matters, it's Ezenwa Nwagu, who is Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. Ezenwa, pleasure to have you with us. Good morning, Nigeria. And Kirian?
And with us also this morning in Abuja studio is Awal Musa Rafsanjani, Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center. He is Head of Transparency International Nigeria. You are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
All right, gentlemen, you are most welcome to this first edition of a Good Morning Nigeria for the week. And we're looking at campaign funding in Nigeria. Now, what is it about campaign funding? Why is it necessary, to regulate campaign funding in Nigeria? Let's begin with Nwagu.
Well, the first important thing will be to ensure that we take off the sale from not making elections to go to the highest bidder. The preface that we saw led us into the fact that if election has to be about the people and not deep pockets, people who can buy off all the processes, then we need to put some bottlenecks. We need to put some stalls in ensuring that people who can buy everything do not take everything. And so if we're able to do that, then it is important, because more and more what has happened is that we've seen the commodification of elections. more and more the politicians, their political parties are not interested in fact, one of the former chairman of the political parties said that they increased the amount of registration forms and all of that to separate the boys from the men. And if you begin to hear that kind of language in a democracy that is supposed to be inclusive, participatory, and all-embracing, then it means that there has to be very sure laws, very clear laws that ensures that there's a level playing ground, ensures that every self-respecting person who wants to participate in elections can do so without the hindrance that money can bring. I think that basically is the reason for ensuring that we regulate campaign finance.
All right, Rafsanjani, let's have your take. Why regulate campaign financing?
Well, it is necessary to regulate the campaign financing because democracy is not about privatization and commercialization of governance, as we have seen now. Unfortunately, many politicians, they have, decided to turn, political leadership as a commercial business entrepreneur. Therefore, some of them, they even go to borrow money. Some of them, they do all sort of kind of thing, sell up their properties, and some of them, they have big, good godfathers who lend them money so that when they win the election, those godfathers, they will now decide and dictate how much every month they will be taking from the coffers of the state. Money that is meant to, use for infrastructure, money that is meant to help ensure that there is a functional healthcare system, money that is meant to ensure that there is functional, educational system, they are now going to be diverted to paying back to these godfathers and to the people that borrowed money in the banks or whatever they have done. So if you don't have sanity in the process, it is going to be a total alienation of decent, responsible, quality, qualified, responsible, and patriotic Nigerians that will participate at local, state, and national level, during the election, because they have not stolen that much that now you are asking them to pay. If you look at what the political parties are charging, many Nigerians cannot, in all honesty, have decent money to procure those the forms that they have been asked to buy. In the last election, 2015, the ruling party was charging just barely about 12 million naira for presidential, candidates. This 2019, the ruling party is asking for 45 million. So which means that, even the change that we are trying to, see in the current, dispensation, it has become an illusion. So it is important that, we regulate how, people use money, to campaign for election. It is not the money. It is supposed to be people's, support, contribution, and, interest that should be at the center. Not how much you have, not how much dollar or pounds or naira that you have. But unfortunately, it has been commercialized. It has been, done in a manner that, decent Nigerians cannot afford to be part and parcel of this process without being involved or collaborate with some corrupt criminals, money bag people. And that is why it is important we talk about enforcement of the, finance campaigning. If we don't do that, I can assure you that, there will be a time when there will not be any decent, Nigerian who has legitimate money or who has legitimate income that will participate in the governance, or leadership process in Nigeria. That is why it is important that we regulate and monitor and enforce.
All right, thank you. And as we make progress in this conversation, we'll also go into some aspects of this, because invariably across the globe is the rich people that engage in politics. But we shall get to know the limits. Now we've been joined by one of our guests at our Ibadan Network Center. He is Dr. Emmanuel Remi Ayede, Associate Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy, University of Ibadan. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
It's my pleasure to be here this morning.
Let me stay with you. What is your own view about regulating campaign financing, especially in Nigeria, where we know that it's not just anybody that goes into politics? What is your view about the regulatory aspect of this campaign financing?
Well, there are two basic reasons why campaign finance has to be regulated. The first is to ensure inclusiveness. In other words, to recognize the fact that within our society, there are levels in terms of income. There are the rich and the poor. If we allow money to flow freely within the electoral process, then the poor, those who are not very well off, will not be able to participate in the electoral process. So ensuring inclusiveness is important. The second is to protect the integrity of the electoral process. Because when people have money and such monies are not regulated in terms of how they use it in campaigns and elections, what happens is that money can be deployed to manipulate the electoral process, to unduly influence the way people vote, to influence officials that manage election, and so on and so forth. So it's important that the use of money is regulated so that we have free, fair, and credible elections.
All right, Dr. Ayede, thank you very much. We'll return to you shortly. But let's now come back to our studios where we have Ishaq Garba Leo. He's the Assistant Director, Campaign Finance Tracking at the Independent National Electoral Commission. Let's try to explore the amplitude as to why campaign financing needs to be regulated. But what is campaign financing?
Okay. Campaign finance is the expenses incurred by political parties or candidates in respect of the campaigns they executed to, buy candidates, to electorates into their own parties. These are the money expended by political parties and candidates to buy in this in. But wherein it goes out of the way, it's where it is used negatively, where illegal monies come into parties and expended beyond the limit set by the law. That's why it becomes out of, it becomes out of the expenses that political parties are supposed to, expend in their campaigns.
What are the items captured under expenses for campaign purposes?
All items that could be used to buy in electorates to the side of the political parties or candidates. This will include other things that the Commission has already itemized as billboards, campaigns and rallies, posters, and other items that will now be able to invite, electors into your own site.
I'm wondering, let's get your take on this. What are the items of expenditure in campaign finance? Let's talk about fairly the obvious ones, billboards, rallies. What about vehicles, logistics, and others from your experience?
Donations.
Yes, fantastic. So tell us, what are the items in campaign financing?
Donations. The law, the Electoral Act is very clear about how much an individual can donate to a political party or a candidate. So when individuals go in excess of those amounts that have been clearly defined by the Constitution, that would be a breach of campaign finance law. So the major, very important one is donations. And like you know, is already in the breach. We've seen people go to fundraisings and say they are giving 2 billion to a campaign, and the law is saying you can't even do that. And as we speak, like Rafsanjani said, we've had that. Nobody has taken any step to call that individual who did that to order, because it's already a breach of the law. So donations is very integral in terms of, and then foreign money. You do not also elicit foreign donations for political parties. That the law is very clear on those. But there is something my brother Kirian said, which I think we shouldn't let go. The idea that all over the world that it is only the rich. Even our recent history does not support that assertion. There is a Jakonde. You know who you, in every good sense, you wouldn't have said that he's a very rich man. Well, he became governor of Lagos State. He lives in his Lukweju house. He still lives there today. He lived there even as the governor of the state. If you go down to Kaduna, you see Balarabe Musa. He's still living in those houses. He won elections in Kaduna. If you go to the Sam Mbakwe who was there, these are people who were not necessarily, you know, rich people in quotes, but who the people invested their votes on because of the things they stood for, and even till today they still live. I mean, the ones that are alive are still living in relative peace of mind. So it's disincentive for, you know, people who actually, because this thing about politics is about participation, and it cannot be for the rich. It can't be for the rich. If once we make it to become that, if you look, self-respecting professor working for 35 years will not have savings of 45 million anywhere until to go and take to buy a form. It means that he has to get that money from someone, and many times the people that give this money influence particularly, and that is the importance of this regulation that we're talking about, so that, you know, no matter how rich you are, no matter how poor you are, the system itself creates a background for you to be able to even aspire. Because what happens now is that the tendency for political parties to criminalize aspiration. And let's not even talk about the dominant political parties. Let's talk about even the freshly minted political parties. What you have seen is that some of them may put 1 million for presidential, 500 for this, but that 1 million can become 45 million for some other person. So the real issues is that, what does the law say? Who is in breach of the law? Is the institution that regulates campaign financing able to rein in those who infract on all of this?
We'll come to all of that shortly, because that's why we have the ANEC person here. But Kirian, I would like Rafsanjani to also speak to this. I asked this question because if you do not clearly isolate the items of expenditure that will qualify for campaign financing, then a proper audit might be challenging, as you very well know. Donations is there, but if a benefactor donates his building to you for your campaign purposes, that's already part of campaign financing. If he buys buses, you know, for your people, that's already part of campaign finance. So how do we draw the line between mere donation and indeed donation intended to facilitate the campaign of a candidate?
You see, this is very clear. There's no way to run about this. There's no beating the bush around this. You know, in all honesty, how many, you know, Nigerians with legitimate money that will charter aircraft to 36 states, you know, of the Federation. Do you know how much it costs? It's not only one aircraft. Many aircrafts, they do that. They go and, you know, go to a rally. Not only that, they go and rent the crowd and they pay them there. You know, in all honesty, this is not within the confine of what the law defines as how much, you know, an individual should pay. That is one. Number two, the live broadcast that, you know, it takes. You know how much NTA collects, you know. You know how much AIT collects. You know how much channel collects. You know how much AIT and TVC and all of them and radio and all of them. All of them, they invite all these media houses, including even the foreign ones. In fact, some they even advertise in CNN and other international media. You know this is outside this, And if not because those people, they have interest in ensuring that after the election, the elected official, they become stood and they, formulate policy and legislation that will enable them to continue to emasculate the economy of the country. What is the interest? That, some of these multinational corporations will be donating. Multinational corporations are also donating these outrageous amounts of money to these candidates and political parties. And in fact, the one ridiculous one that is coming now is to say, oh, I don't even have money, so it is the student that gathered to buy the form for me. It's so ridiculous. So I think, we need to, be serious about governance. Governance is not about, buying, leadership. It is, a trusted disposition to serve the people, honestly, responsibly, in a manner that would, uplift people from the, poverty, from the underdevelopment they find themselves. But in Nigeria, it is the other way around. It is an avenue, it is a platform that people, they now use to make sure that, they steal more for their children unborn, grandchildren unborn. Because the stealing that is going on in Nigeria now, both in local government, at the state and national level, is such that you cannot actually, in all honesty, you cannot actually understand why somebody should, siphon public funds in that quantum that, he or she, when they steal the money, they go and deposit it in Europe or America or Asia or even in Africa, they cannot even have access to it. As I speak to you now, we are still battling to recover the stolen asset of Nigeria, stolen by these same characters. So I think it is important, because of the artificial poverty these characters have put us, that we must regulate. We must make sure that, we have proper sanction. We make sure that, the civil society, the media, the political party itself, the anti-corruption agencies come together to work to make sure that, we did not allow people, to use the name of campaign financing to actually, have their way by having policy and legislation that will favor them so that they will continue to, enrich themselves at the expense of the nation, at the expense of the people. Because usually when you donate that kind of money, when they get in there, if the bill gets to National Assembly, the legislators, many of them who have been sponsored by those people, they will not hesitate to make sure that they do a favorable legislation for them. The executive arm will not hesitate to sign. In fact, they will even do executive order so that they can easily recoup all the money their godfathers have spent on their behalf.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Gentlemen, over the years, we have witnessed elections in this country, and I've realized the fact that to some extent, to a reasonable extent, election is business in this country. Even for those who may not have the wherewithal in terms of finances, are influential and get people to make donations to them. That's where donation, comes in. I'd like to ask Professor Ayede to look into the aspect of electioneering campaign period in Nigeria as business period, where even those who are not directly involved in politics donate their money as sowing a seed, so that when you win, I will recover my money when you give me some contract. And we're now looking at campaign financing generally. Now, at what point would it be an error, for a candidate of a particular party to raise some funds that he will require to attend to logistics, attend to transportation and what have you in a particular election?
Well, campaign seasons are usually seasons of very high expenditure. And the challenge really in Nigeria is that political parties don't have systematic records about campaign expenditure. And this is required by law. Because what happens is that once it is high time and campaign time, what candidates do is to simply try as much as they can to garner resources from friends, from relatives, from people with political interest, and so on and so forth. Now, it is expected that there should be a systematic way of tracking whatever contribution is made to a particular campaign. But what happens is that such records never really exist because most of the financing are usually informal. People can bring their vehicles to bear. People can pay for advertorials. People can help prepare jingles for a particular political party or candidate. So the activities involved are so enormous. Even people who attend rallies sometimes are paid to attend those rallies. And these are things that are not put on paper. So in the case of Nigeria, recording expenses during campaign is a first step towards ensuring giving account of expenditure during campaign. Now, it's difficult to say which ones are legal, which ones are not legal, because what the law provides for is in terms of who can contribute and how much an individual is allowed to contribute. Then the law also provides for a situation where there should be a ceiling in terms of the amount of expenses a candidate is allowed to incur during campaign. But as I have described, most of the contributions to candidates and political parties during campaign period are often off record. And because of that, it's extremely very difficult to even estimate what the cost of a particular candidate's campaign will look like. In the 2011 presidential election, we did a study on the cost of election, and by looking at mere live television coverage, transportation, and campaign rallies, we found that and then of course the fundraising dinners that were conducted by individuals and political parties, and the amount of pledges that they received, from donors, we realized that there was massive disregard of the provisions of the law in terms of the ceiling on campaign expenditure, and also in terms of practical experience on the field, in terms of what is actually spent on campaign. So in terms of the regulation of campaign finance in Nigeria, there is a huge problem because as we have seen in the earlier guideline of the political parties that was issued by INEC, INEC actually admitted that it does not have the capacity to effectively monitor and regulate the financings of political parties.
All right, Dr. Ayede, thank you very much. Well, I think we'll return to the INEC Assistant Director who's right here with us in the studios, but there's one aspect of just the conceptual issue of campaign financing that perhaps we can just mention in passing, which has to do with the role of corporations in making donations to political parties. There are provisions in CAMA, that's the Companies and Allied Matters Act, that restrain companies from engaging in that. We had seen in the past so-called corporate Nigeria making donations to the campaign finances of a certain political party in the past. But in the U.S., for instance, the Supreme Court of the U.S. has had a decision on what it calls corporate speech. In other words, where companies can put their money where their mouth is. That's on the basis of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Well, that's not an area we want to delve into that because it's going to take us further to drill into that. But Ishak, does INEC have the capacity to monitor effectively campaign financing?
Well, INEC is doing its best. When I say it's doing its best, the volume of the number of candidates that are involved in the election, I don't think INEC will have the capacity to monitor that at the moment. For instance, in 2015 general elections, we had about 8,173 candidates that vie for different positions, election positions. And when you look at it, we have offices in the states and at local government level. If you compare that with the number of candidates that vied for election in 2015, it will be very difficult for INEC at that point in time to be able to monitor effectively the candidates for their expenses. That time, there were about 28 political parties. Now we have about 91 political parties with so many candidates. So the capacity in terms of manpower is another aspect that is bedeviling the commission itself. But like I said earlier on, the Commission is doing its best to see it can be able, at certain level, to be able to monitor and track the expenses of these candidates.
Yes, we have more political parties now, than what we had, in 2015 elections. And let's focus on the big ones, so to speak, perhaps the first 10, for instance. And your office is responsible for tracking.
Yeah.
Now, what is the methodology, that you apply for this? Because, of course, the big ones that we know, if we start from them to track this and know how much they're spending, then we can now, try and see how, we can, apportion or position the other parties. Now, what is the method you're putting in place to track the known big political parties in Nigeria who are playing the major role in the entire exercise? Is there any monitoring strategy or any other kind of strategy that you have to do this?
Yes, there is. But for us, we don't have, we consider major and minor political parties. All political parties in the eyes of INEC are the same. We have put machinery in action to monitor at all levels, national, state, and local government level. We have trained our staff to do the monitoring aspect at all levels. At the national level, we established a center we call Campaign Finance Tracking Management Center at the national level, where we recruited staff that will monitor the print media and the electronic media adverts of all the candidates at the presidential level. While at the state level, our offices will monitor the governorship elections of candidates. We're giving specification of rules that this is how you're going to do it. And at local government level, we have designated officers that track the expenses of candidates at that level. So we have a synergy between all the three tiers of the Commission on how to track, and we have identified items that are going to track for these political parties.
Are you synergizing with some agencies such as ICPC, FCC, Central Bank, or any of the commercial?
Of course, we are doing. Prior to 2015 general elections, the Commission approved the establishment of an interagency committee, which comprises EFCC, ICPC, CBN, Federal Inland Revenue Service, National Broadcasting Commission, whereby they will have a synergy, interacting together, sharing ideas and views on how to track the campaign expenditure of candidates. For instance, in the 2015 general elections, we had a problem when we are trying to get the expenses of candidates in terms of media expenses. When our officers wrote to various agencies, they refused to divulge information in that respect. But with the synergy we have with NBC, it will assist us in getting this information from these media houses, because this is the regulatory body on that. The same thing with CBN. We are thinking of having a dedicated account for all the political parties in the banks, where in CBN will come in as a regulatory agency to monitor, to help us. EFCC also will be there, that will check money laundering and other aspects. So there is a synergy between these sister organizations that the Commission has already established.
All right. Well, earlier, I'm sure you heard when Rafsanjani was taking up some of the items of expenditure. He was talking, for instance, about executive air charter services. Are all this also under your radar?
They are. What we are looking at is that we are looking at donations and in-kind donations. There are cash donations and in-kind donations. We are looking at all this. We have mapped out strategies to look at all these expenses that the candidates are doing. But like we said earlier on, the number of candidates are huge, and then the capacity, that is manpower and resources, are minimal. So, but we are doing our best based on the provisions of the regulations, the laws within the land.
And INEC doesn't appear to have the wherewithal to outsource some of the monitoring?
Well, as for now, we are not outsourcing anything at all to any other organization at all for now. But like you say, we are collaborating with other agencies, even with civil society organizations that will assist us. This is a constitutional responsibility of the Commission.
Now, as a one ago, sorry, as a one ago, you know, we seem to have NINEC seems to have challenge in this. You know, one, he noted that you have a huge number of political parties, and if not thousands, you know, of candidates, you know, vying for different positions, you know, in the election, from councillorship to the presidency. Now, it is a big challenge, and they don't have the capacity to do that. Now, what would be your suggestion to INEC as to how, you know, to go about monitoring the trend of so much fund, you know, in the campaign?
You know, it befuddles the mind most times, really, when you hear public institutions say they are trying their best. The worry for me is the institutions are not established to try their best. They are established to resolve a problem and deal with it. We've not been, when it was 28 political parties, there is nobody that is in court for breach of campaign finance. So the real problem is perhaps not just the fact that the resources are not there. There's also some complicity and unwillingness to deal and confront an issue that faces us directly. And I think we need to underscore that point. The drama in this country is to play the ostrich. See, the monies for campaign finance do not go through banks. They are carried in Ghana must go. Everybody knows this. The reality is that which political party really exists outside the state? Okay? The dominant political parties put their hands in the public till. Okay? They are the ones who drive these processes. And we know these things. The state governors dominate. If you see in the parties, the dominant political parties, the drivers of the campaign in those states are the chief executives of those states. And the monies that they play with are not going through normal processes. No, you can't track those issues. So we need, first and foremost, the collaboration, the real collaboration with, if you want. But the problem is that the huge conspiracy against the Nigerian people by institutions that should regulate this process is the big issue. The police. The police has deep responsibility to track this issue. EFCC will try, but there is an attitude we have towards election. You know, we spread it all over the place. It's election time. So if I slap somebody, it is no longer assault. You know, it is slap during election. If you continue with that mentality, we are not going to solve the problem that confronts us. Collectively, civil society, religious institutions, the media, we all have to come against the politicians and say, look, by the time you continue to foul if you continue to defecate in the public well, we all are going to be implicated. The consequence will be on all of us. Let me tell you, sir, the human development HDI that we all talk about that is already going down. If you continue to sell the electoral process the way we are doing, he calls it trading most of the time. If you trade the way we are going, you will find out that elections and its outcome will become an investment. And those who put their money in it will first and foremost recoup before they start thinking of whether you are going to have roads, whether you are going to have hospitals. And the dire consequence of it is what should spring up these institutions. INEC, the security agencies, the political parties themselves should introspect. The governors and the presidents who and the big pockets who also foul this environment should introspect and ask themselves what kind of country they want to build in the near future. Except we deal with these issues directly. If you call EFCC here now, EFCC will tell you that, you know, we are doing our best, the challenges are enormous. If you call the police, he says, oh, the challenges are enormous. Before you accepted the job, you knew the challenges were enormous. You knew that you live in a big country. You knew that you live in a democracy. We are going to have more parties. There is no issue about it. If it is democracy, more people will come in. So we have to be prepared. If we are not prepared, then what we need to do is to begin to ask these institutions to account in terms of output, because we are not doing service delivery. We are not doing value for money. If we put 10 million naira in INEC to monitor campaign financing, at the end of the day, we should be able to ask you just show us 3 people who you have docked for violating this law. But we don't do that. Nobody follows that process. So in the next election cycle, we'll bring INEC. INEC will say we are trying our best, and then all of that will just continue and then do the analysis and we'll move on.
All right, Essien, well, thank you very much. Rafsanjani, let's get your take on this. I mean, apparently, perhaps one of the chief concerns about violations of campaign financing has to do with the need to ensure that we do not have the ascendancy of plutocrats. And also, in particular, the use of state resources, whether local, state, or federal government, for campaign purposes. How realistic is it to restrain state actors, political state actors, from funding their campaigns or the campaigns of their nominees?
Well, since last year, 2017 to date, and up to the 2019, unfortunately, many public officials have decided to dedicate state resources for election campaigning. And some governors, they even openly, come out to make donation within the state's resources, not even within their own personal resources, which might even be above what, the INEC, set aside. And nobody is questioning them. And like, it's been said here, the real actors who are doing this are people who are in government. I remember in 2015, we had to protest as civil society because one of the special advisors to the president was writing letter to public institutions asking them to contribute money for the election of the president. Then, we protested and, we had to shout and make sure that that's, discontinued. It was even a public knowledge. This process has not even stopped now. And, if you do not stop people using their offices that they are entrust to, deliver good governance, and now cornering this money to do this, and which is not accounted for, you will not, do anything. There's what they call security boards. These security boards, from day one, when they enter office, this is money that is not accounted for, is not audited for, is not oversighted for. So they use this, security board, to also do this election campaigning thing, and nobody is saying anything. As a matter of fact, CISLAC has been leading a campaign on outlawing the security board, because the security board will realize that every agency of government is collecting security board. Agency that has nothing to do with providing security and safety, they are collecting security board, and nobody is asking how they spend the money. This money obviously is being used for personal, empowerment, or to channel their political parties and their campaigns. So we need to, make sure that we stop that. If INEC is serious about this, if INEC is serious about, monitoring and tracking election, campaigning, they know that a credible civil society organization that they can bring on board. They can, if EFCC and ICPC, they will not also do the bidding of the government of the day. It is possible we can actually deal with this matter. But the problem is that, many public institutions, once the ruling party is there, whatever, violation they have done, they will keep quiet. They will keep quiet. They will not do anything, But if the opposition does anything, they will go after them. So until we stop and change that and know that we're dealing with Nigeria, not with the government in power, I think we will not solve this problem. So we can work with the media, civil society, organizations that are involved, that have the capacity to be able to track and monitor this and do, provide, this information to INEC. Because, like he said, INEC, even if they have the money, the resources, they will not do it, because many a times, once the ruling party is there, they will not touch the ruling party. They will go and be chasing those small parties that they don't even have any offices anywhere. So I think, for me, if we are serious about this, it is possible. Let every political parties, as part of INEC regulation, have a website where they will publicize who donates what, how much it is. Yes, it is happening. You can track, you can do that tracking, And if we are serious about that, We know that, you know, all those corporate organizations during the dinner, they will organize a dinner, they will donate this outrageous amount of money. We can caution them, we can tell them, look, this is not acceptable. And until we are able to do that and we start with the ruling party, you cannot do that because the ruling party had already broke the whole thing by asking candidates to pay 45 million naira. That is outrageous. That is already political corruption. So there's no way you can actually even stop anything, you know. So I think, you know, for me, if we are serious about sanitizing the governance process in Nigeria, we must start now. And we should stop having these excuses that we are trying. We are not trying anything. There's nothing like trial that we are doing. In fact, as a matter of fact, we are aiding them. Because when you don't take action, when you don't sanction them, they will continue to do whatever they want to do. Like as I said, if you just bring a result, one result, it will serve as a measure for us to tomorrow to build on that. But there's no report. Nothing is coming from anywhere. Police or...
I don't know, Kieran, I think it's useful to clarify a point. The cost of nomination forms doesn't necessarily qualify as part of campaign finance, does it?
No, I'm saying that...
No, it doesn't.
It's part of the challenge. You see, the politicians create loopholes. These loopholes is our responsibility as citizens to let them know that we know these loopholes. So you say aspirant spending. There is something now called the expenditure of aspirants.
All right.
Okay, which the 45 million you are talking about goes into, and that is a constant. It's something that runs through up to the point where that person becomes a candidate.
Oh, okay, I think one of the issues here is the fact that politicians themselves are not patriotic enough, you know, to adhere to what the rule says. That is the beginning. And let's go to Dr. Ayede on this. You know, Kingsley asked this question, and I'm just going to do a little amplification of it. And that has to do with the question he put to Rafsanjani. And I would like you to touch more on that. And that is to say that the huge amount that are garnered by these politicians, they come from Ghana Must Go, as Nwagu told us. But this money also came from the bank as well. It is a huge sum. That's why it's carried in a big bag. Right. So in the process of tracking, you know, those who must have erred in terms of, you know, campaign financing, what would you suggest to INEC to do to see how this tracking will begin from monitoring individuals? Another is that of state sponsorship, be it at the federal, state, or local government level, where people in authority will sponsor the candidates of their political parties. What's your thought?
Let me begin by adding a voice to the clarification of the issue of the form, for the nomination form. You must know that when we talk about campaign finance, there's both revenue and expenditure part. Because when the parties raise money through the forms, they are going to deploy that money in financing campaigns. So, in fact, the amount paid to purchase form or even signifies interest for nomination is actually an element of campaign finance. Now, the other thing is that when you talk about what has happened over time, we can't completely say that no step has been taken to deal with the issue of money in terms of elections. One of the things that has happened in these last couple of days is that monies have been used to compromise the administration of election. And previously, nothing has happened. But in the past few years, we know that some INEC officials who have been involved in collecting money from politicians in order to affect the electoral process have actually been arrested, tried, and some of them convicted. So, in a sense, things are not necessarily business as usual. Then the other point is that when we talk about the use of government funds, we should not talk in terms of people investing money and recouping that money when they get into power. The situation that we have today is that people in authority actually milk government in order to be able to fund elections, not just their own elections in terms of second-term elections, but also elections of other candidates at lower levels of government, or even at higher levels of government, as we have seen governors contributing money to fund the presidential campaign. So the situation is much more complicated than we often paint it, so that people invest money and they quit. No, people actually are in government to arm themselves in order to become godfathers, in order to become decision makers in terms of electoral outcomes. So that's very important. Now, most of these behavior are not in line with the law. They involve crass abuse of power by those who are in authority. In other words, one of the very fundamental challenges that we face in terms of campaign finance is not just to be addressed at the level of monitoring monies that are spent in election. We have to strengthen accountability arrangement within government, ensure that resources that are spent by those in public office are accounted for, and that those who do not, who abuse power in this regard are brought to book. If we don't do that, then the situation will persist. And that's why it's happening that some governors have been, former governors have been convicted in terms of the amount of money that they are unable to account for. Now, in terms of INEC role, if you look at the law itself, you'll find that some of the functions that they need to do in order to monitor and check the money that are spent in campaign are very technical. And they need specialized agencies to be able to deal with some of those things. I know that there are organizations outside INEC who are able to do that. And that's why the first call that has been made that EFCC should be involved to play its role in terms of issues of money laundering and other security agencies is very vital. Well, one other thing that has also been said, which I think is very important, is the fact that there are non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, who have developed expertise, locally especially, in monitoring campaign finance. And we need to do this monitoring not just at the formal level of looking at how monies move in and out of the bank, but also in terms of what happens, you know, in the field. And that's actually where the problem really is. Because if you look at the requirement of the law, it says political parties, you report, give account of their campaign finances to the INEC after election. If you look at the report that has been given, some of them claim not to have spent even up to 400 million throughout the campaign election for the election in 2015. This cannot be true, and they are very unrealistic, unreliable reports. So we need to find a way of ensuring that as political parties are given their own report, INEC also has its own way of tracking some of these expenditures so that they can have a basis for comparison. And as we have also said, we need to, INEC needs to employ the services of organizations that can help in that regard. And I know that recently, I think the International Foundation for Electoral Support, IFES, has called for such organizations who are able to do that to signify interest, and that they are going to provide funds so that they will be able to carry out those activities. I believe that it takes time to build capacity for this kind of technical activities, and as we continue to focus on it and make effort to ensure that we build this capacity in the long run, we will continue to do better and better in terms of monitoring and checkmating and enforcing the laws regarding campaign finance activities.
All right, Dr. Ayede, thank you very much, and indeed, gentlemen, thanks a lot. But let's not go away or leave our viewers to go away with the impression that there have been no consequences any time in our political history for the use of state funds by state political actors for election purposes. We saw what happened in 1984 with the various military tribunals. And if you go back at the time, you will find that the particulars of the offenses of some of those actors then, including state governors who were jailed for hundreds of years, included making donations to their political parties. At the time, we had only 5 political parties. That was what happened in 1984. So there had been consequences in the past, and so we need to underscore that fact. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll take your tweets and also get the closing thoughts of our guests. you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are discussing campaign financing, and we still have all our 4 guests, one at Ibadan Network Center, and then 3 of them with us here in the Abuja studios. We have tweets. We'll go through the tweets now and then get the closing thoughts of our guests. Mike Ayankwo has this tweet: Godfatherism in politics starts with campaign financing. This has really helped in stunting our democracy. They finance the elections, and at the end of the day, they remote control the candidates they sponsored. And this has negatively affected governance.
All right, Abraham Chiejile says, if you hear the huge amounts of money these aspirants spend in the process of campaigning, you wonder if they get elected, why wouldn't they embezzle government funds?
Law Alpha C has 2 tweets there. Take them. It says, political parties will certainly contravene the provisions of the law, considering the level of desperation to get into office. Now, whose legal responsibility is it to monitor the financial activities of political parties on campaigns and allied matters? That of INEC.
Delejak Solomon, sadly, in the Nigerian experience, political office holders take loans, borrow money from godfathers, which is to be repaid with interest and at a cost, and other means of raising funds, looking for later day returns on investments. These corrupt tendencies are responsible for do-or-die politics in the looting of our national treasury in Nigeria.
Now, Husseini Baba tweets, now, had it been that these politicians would spend the money for campaigns on IDPs, the game would have changed.
All right, Festus Akimbo, while it is understandable that parties need money to contest elections, develop policies and provide effective opposition, there is no doubt that in the last 20 years, our democracy and effective electoral competition has been undermined by inadequacies or inequalities of funding.
Adam Abdullahi tweets, now, to me, campaign financing is just a way of influencing people's independent choice of voting. I do not see this impacting our democracy in any way. Rather, billions of naira are wasted or otherwise embezzled in the process.
Now, Ibrahim Tudu, use of money for campaigns, vote buying and other offenses are real and go unchecked. It's high time we came up with the Electoral Offences Tribunal, because INEC is overwhelmed and can't take care of all these offenses.
Now, Suleiman Babagana tweets, restructuring political parties as it relates to the financial aspect is a way forward. The masses should say no to money politics for a credible democratic setting in Nigeria. Campaign financing is one of the main factors hindering youth involvement in holding elective office.
All right, from Akeju Olabaju, the truth is that you need finances to campaign, but you can restore sanity to its use if you prevent the use of government funds to campaign for elections. This is the responsibility of everyone to monitor.
Ayola Tawhid Adeni, politics has now become a business in Nigeria. The more you invest, the more you gain.
All right, Sani Michael Amokaji, campaign financing is a huge problem in this part of the world, from primaries to general elections. It's so great that young Nigerians with the mental capacity, but with meager resources, cannot dare enter into politics. We need a holistic change of system, our mentality, and of course the rules of the game.
Suleiman Babagana again tweets, now, huge demand of cash by the masses contributes to looting by political office holders once elected, as they see it as a return on investment. And it says there's no room for cashless campaign in Nigeria as found in other parts of the world. Okay, Kirian, that's one or two others. Yeah, that's, as I said, we had a number of tweets. Cecilia Okoroma would like to thank you. It says, what structure do we have to checkmate overspending by political gladiators? Is the highest spender that win elections? Stolen monies are stored, high tanks kept at burial grounds, and so on and so forth. All right, so those are the tweets that we are able to take in the meantime. Yes, let's get the closing thoughts of the INEC Assistant Director with regard to campaign financing very quickly.
When we look at that campaign financing is a global issue. In 2012, in the United States, over $6 billion were spent in terms of campaigns. In Brazil, over 90% of the donations came from other corporations and what have you. It's a global issue. It's not peculiar only to Nigeria. And when we say that INEC is doing its best,
you just talked about how much was spent in the U.S. and Brazil. How much was spent in Nigeria in 2015?
We could not say this is how much is being spent. But when we say this is a global issue, and each country is dealing with its own issue at its own thing with its own regulations, and we have designed forms you know, for political parties to report back to us as provided in the Electoral Act, election contributions, election expenses, and then we're also tracking at our own side, doing a parallel expense tracking from both sides so that we're able to compare and see which of the parties, you know, has exceeded to the limit of being set by the law. So when we say we are doing our best, we are doing our best to as much as possible to see. But like I said, it's a global issue. Yes. So only peculiar to Nigeria.
Yes, we thank you for that. Actually, it's not peculiar to Nigeria. It is a global issue, no doubt about that. And every country has her own issue with respect to campaign financing. And in Nigeria here, we've just deliberated on that this morning with our guests, you know, who made a very insightful contributions to the conversation with respect to that topic. And of course, the election is 2 months away from now, and we believe that before then, INEC would have come up with some strategies, you know, to give you more, so that your best will be good enough. Yeah. All right, thank you. At this point, gentlemen, we thank you again for being here. Ishaq Garba Aliyu, Assistant Director, INEC, in charge of campaign finance tracking. Thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you.
On Good Morning Nigeria. And Ezenwa Nwagu, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms, we thank you as always, because you're always here with us when we call on you.
Thank you.
All right. And Awal Musa Rafsanjani, Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, and Head of Transparency International Nigeria. It's been great having your thoughts on this program today. And our friend from Ibadan, Dr. Emmanuel Remi Ayede, Associate Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy, University of Ibadan. Thank you so much for being here for us this morning.
Pleasure. Thank you too.
Right, next from here is sports. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. We thank you for watching, and please do same again tomorrow when we return with a fresh package. My name is Kirian Umayo.
I'm Kingsley Osadola. I join Kirian in thanking you for your company. We'll have a lovely day ahead of you.